Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be grading all the picks made in the first round of the 2025 NHL draft just a few days ago. Looking back and grading these picks based on what the team needed in their prospect pool, what they needed on their actual team, the future, the players on the board, the value they got, all those sort of things playing into effect in these grades. But a disclaimer, these are very immediate grades of just at the moment, the value, players on the board, all that sort of stuff. It is not a showing of how these players may develop, how they may grow, break out. Things change over the development course of these players. So this is just a very immediate rating of these picks when they were made just now. We'll start us off at number 1, the first overall pick. As expected, it was Matthew Schaefer, and that was an easy A. I mean, the best player on the board, you took the best player at 1. There's no room for really an A+ with the first overall pick because you can't really make good value on it. You can't get a player who is valued higher than that because they can't be valued any higher. So yeah, Matthew Schaefer's an A. Is a great pick. He's going to be the franchise #1 defenseman for the Islanders. And yeah, it's going to be a really good fit there. At second overall, the San Jose Sharks grabbed Michael Misa, and I give that one an A as well. It's simply, again, same sort of thing. I had Michael Misa as my second rated player. He went to the second overall pick team, and it was really good value. They didn't overthink it. I think Frundell would have been overthinking it a little bit. So they went with a guy that I think best available player, and it worked out well. I think it's going to work out well for the Sharks. At number 3, we move to Anton Frundell at the Chicago Blackhawks pick. At number 3, I give this one an A-. For me, it's a good pick. He's going to be a great player for Chicago. He's going to be a really good fit next to Bedard. Just not who I would have gone with, but there's not. It's a very close ranking between Frundell, but I would have gone with like a Hagens or a Martone personally. But I can see why Frundell's the pick. I think it's a good fit. I think it's going to be a great player. So it's sort of just I might have not gone with that one, but it's not a bad pick by any means, and it's going to be a great piece for the Chicago Blackhawks and their rebuild. At number 4, I'm going to go with, it's Caleb Desnoyers. I'm going to give it an A as well. These picks, the top 4 went pretty much as expected on draft day, and these are all really good picks. I think for Utah and Desnoyers, it's just a really good fit. I don't know if he was necessarily the best available player, but they needed to see of the future behind Logan Cooley. I think Desnoyers is the perfect player for that. Plays a really good two-way game, and he's just his skill set is gonna blend very well with the rest of the team. A guy like Martone doesn't really fit in when they have a lot of wingers already, and Hagens is just a smaller version of Logan Cooley. You really don't need another of the same player. It's nice to have that variance in your top 2 centers. At number 5, we go to the Nashville Predators and Brady Martin. This is the first pick I disagreed with. I give it a C. It was expected Martin was going to be a top 7 guy, and I fully had expected that. I mocked it in my mock draft, but doesn't mean I agree with it. Just because I knew it was going to happen, and everyone knew it was going to happen, and GMs are loving this style of player, I still don't believe it was the right pick for Nashville. I don't believe Martin's a top 10 player in this class. He has a lot of skill sets and assets that teams are very high on, like his physicality. He's one of the best body checkers in this class. But to me, I think Nashville with Martone and Hagens on the board, your prospect pool needs a top-end elite piece. You could have grabbed it right there with one of those two, and they just didn't. I think they're in a position they should have just gone BPA and not tried to get fancy with it. I think Martin, bit of a miss. I think Martin's going to be a great player, but I think his ceiling's a little capped. I don't think he has the same skill ceiling as some of these other guys do. So it's an interesting pick. He's going to be a good player. He's definitely a great player, like off the ice. He's got all the characteristics you want in a player off the ice. Really good kid and has a bright future. I'm not 100% on board with Brady Martin as the top 7 pick, which he sort of rose into during the postseason process. At number 6, it's Philadelphia grabbing Porter Martone, a pick that really surprised me and really disappointed me as well at the draft. I was not happy with the Flyers grabbing Martone, one of my favorite prospects here, going to the team I do not like watching in the Philadelphia Flyers. I give it a B. I've been talking about Martone being one of the best available players on the board for these last few picks and would have been great fits. I just don't like the fit in Philadelphia. I really think they needed a center. That is, to me, I know you don't want to draft for need, but when Hagens and Martone are there, they're both so interchangeable to me. I have Martone at 3 and Hagens at 4, but I flip-flop on it all the time, and you could convince me either way who was 3 and who was 4. When it's that close, one, you should typically lean towards the centerman, and 2, you need a centerman, so take that shot. It's not like it's going to really backfire on you. The reason I'm not a fan of the Martone fit is because you look at the wingers the Flyers have for their future, immediate and a little further down the line. Travis Konechny is a winger. Owen Tippett, Trevor Zegras, I think, moves to the wing. I don't think he's a full-time centerman, and definitely not a 1C. Noah Cates is a good middle six guy. Tyson Forster's a winger. Bobby Brink's a winger. Matvei Michkov's a winger. Jacob Pelletier's a winger. You go down to their prospect pool. Alex Bump is a winger. Denver Barkey is a winger. You have Jit Luchenko, but again, Jit Luchenko falls in the same sort of mold as a Noah Cates, with a middle six kind of guy, probably more third line type. You don't have a 1C for your future to pair with Matvei Michkov. Both Michkov and Martone play the right wing. You could put one on the other side, but it gets a little clunky at that point. You need a guy to play with Michkov. You need a guy to play make for him, and Higgins was that perfect fit. Or Jake O'Brien, for that matter, would have been a really good fit there. Roger McQueen gets you some good size like Martone has, and gives you the fact that he can play the center position. I really think they should have gone that direction, and I just think it's a crowded winger room for the Flyers, and it's the going notion, the common notion is it's a lot easier, it's a lot better to have too many centers than too many wingers, because you can always take a centerman and put him on the wing. You cannot take a winger and put him at center. It doesn't work like that. So I'm just really not a fan of the fit, and it's going to be weird how they try and shake that lineup out long term. So the player is great, and it's the best available player to me, but not by enough to diminish the value of the miss on not taking a centerman. At 7th overall, the Boston Bruins snagged James Higgins. I give this one an A+. I got him the 4th ranked prospect on my board at number 7. Is amazing value. Boston was in a best player available situation. They do not have a good prospect pool at all. This immediately jumps their prospect pool way up there. Really, really good, talented player, and is the future centerman of the future on the top line next to David Pastrnak for the Boston Bruins. I really love this pick, and I think it's a really good fit there in Boston. They did not overthink it. It just went BPA, and I think it's going to work out. At number 8, the Seattle Kraken grabbing Jake O'Brien. I give this one a B-. I didn't have Jake O'Brien in the same level. I didn't have him as a top 8 guy, so to me it is a little bit down on value. And once again, it's similar to how I graded the Berkeley Catton pick last year, but it's even worse now to me because for 2 reasons. One, Jake O'Brien is not the prospect Berkeley Catton was or is, so that changes things for me. But the big reason is now you have 4 centermans down the middle that all play similar styles. And like I said, it's easier to move a center to the wing. And I think Jake O'Brien will move to the wing and be a winger long term. But you have a glaring need in your prospect pool at the back end, and Radim Murtka would have been a good fit there. Or you could trade back. That was another option too. With Jake O'Brien, it's like he's like Berkeley Catton, just not he's a tier down from Berkeley Catton, a good playmaking centerman who's got good size and that sort of thing. Shane Wright does that same sort of build. Matt Ebeniers is a different one. He plays a good two-way game. He's the difference maker in that center room. But again, it's just another centerman. And I get they're a BPA kind of team, but at some point you do have to take a centerman, or you have to take a defenseman. I will say, however, despite this pick, I'm not a big fan of it. They did manage to get a really good pick at the top of the 2nd round, grabbing Blake Fiddler. That really balances out a little bit, but I'm not taking that into account for just this pick here. I can't take into account to what they did in later picks to maybe make up for it. But that pick did help soften the blow here, you could say. Grabbing Blake Fiddler, who I had as a 1st round guy at the top of the 2nd, was a really good value pick for Seattle. At number 9, the Buffalo Sabres grabbing Radim Murtka. Give it a B. It's just an overall just okay pick. There was nothing really crazy here. Nothing too special. It's not like you're not getting a surefire thing. But again, I think odds are you got a really good top 4 minute munching big defenseman on the right side, and Buffalo's building quite the big decor with Kesselring and Power, and Dahlin's got some good size to him too. This is a big decor here in Seattle or in Buffalo, so I like the pick. I think it's a solid fit. Just doesn't quite have the upside maybe you'd be hoping for as a Sabres fan, I think. But I don't think there was only a whole lot here that would have given, there's not a whole lot they could have picked here that would have been like, yeah, that's an A, it's a great pick, because there just wasn't. It's a weird spot in the value of this draft class where I wasn't sure how to value the players in this area, so it's just a B. It's just solid. There's just nothing too special about the pick per se. At number 10, we get to the Anaheim Ducks grabbing Roger McQueen. I give it a B+. Solid pick, right on the value spot in my eyes, especially with the injury concerns, but obviously they're not afraid of the injury, and I think that's sort of the notion that's been coming out is the injury won't be a big issue. But regardless, I think it's a solid pickup, and it adds another big physical power forward to this Anaheim team. They're adding some real big size. They had a big forward group. Mason McTavish is a good power forward type. Carter Gauthier plays that hard-nosed style. You got Beckett Seneca, who's a bigger guy. Leo Carlson's their skill piece, but he's 6'3", so they're building a real big forward core up there. And again, they're in the opposite boat to the Philadelphia Flyers. These guys are all centermen, but it's a whole lot easier to go and start spreading these guys out on the wings and moving them all around like that. It gives you a lot more flexibility. That's why I like picking the centerman over taking the winger in certain cases. And unlike Seattle, who has a similar problem, Anaheim has a really good D-core of the future with the likes of Zellweger, Minchikov, Drysdale's in Philly, but they got a few other pieces there. Drew Hellison's decent. Jackson Lacombe's had some good run. Tristan Luneau looks to be a solid piece. So they got good D-core pieces there. They're kind of a pretty well-rounded pool. So this is BPA and a good pick. At number 11, my Pittsburgh Penguins, a pick I wasn't the biggest fan of is Ben Kindle. I give it a C. I think Kindle is a good player, and I think he's going to be a really talented player. He's got a lot of skill. The size is a big question mark, and I think with the emphasis teams were putting on big forwards, I really think he could have gotten Kindle a little later. I think it's really a little early for Kindle. It's not a knock on the player, it's the value. The players that were on the board, if you wanted to take an undersized forward, I would have 100% taken Victor Eklund or Carter Bear. Carter Bear's not really undersized, but he's not big either. But Victor Eklund is who I would have taken because he has more skill than Ben Kindle, and he plays a more physical style. I do think Pittsburgh went with Ben Kindle because they want a centerman, and I think they view Kindle as a center. Again, the size makes me not so sure he will be a center. We'll see how he develops. I like the skill here. I like there's some really big upside here, but there's also a lot of risk, and I really think the Penguins should have just taken two surefire things at 11 and 12 with decent upside to really accelerate this prospect pool, because to me, I was hoping with 11 and 12 we'd come away with arguably our two top prospects in the pool, and I don't think that ended up happening. So a little disappointed in the pick, but I think Kindle's got some good upside if he can develop accordingly. And at 12, the Penguins traded out of this pick and with the Philadelphia Flyers. With the trade, just looking at the trade as a whole, I think the Penguins got really good value. The reason I didn't like the trade is because Victor Eklund was still on the board. And this is, again, at this point in the draft, I was like, oh my God, how is this kid still here? If we had taken Eklund at 11 and then made this trade, I would have been pretty ecstatic because the Penguins traded back a decent chunk. They traded back around 10 picks with the Philadelphia Flyers, division rivals. So that's also, it was a little questionable. But they got 2 first-round picks for it. So the value just looking at the trade is really solid. Like, I'd rather have the picks we got than pick number 12, I think. Having both those picks, it was really good value. And it made it feel a lot better when I think the Flyers butchered the pick, grabbing Jack Nesbitt. Nesbitt's decent. I was a little lower on him. I had him as a 32nd ranked prospect. I give this pick a D. I was not a fan of this pick. I knew he was going to go in the 20 to 25 range, but Philly was in that range. Like, to me, you could have easily, I think, waited or traded up a little less, to get a guy like Jack Nesbitt. I think they were trying to leapfrog Ottawa. The rumor was Ottawa was looking for a player like Nesbitt, but you didn't need to leapfrog him by that much. You were picking right behind him. You could have moved up 5 spots, you could move up 3 spots, and he would have been perfectly fine. They moved him way too high, gave up way too many assets for a player that I just don't see as a potential high upside guy. And again, similar to what I was talking about with Seattle and grabbing a good value at a position of need later in the draft, if they had traded up and grabbed a really good centerman here, I would have felt a whole lot better about the Martone pick. But to me, Nesbitt falls in the same category as Noah Cates and Jet Luchenko as a third-line guy. I don't see Nesbitt as anything more than a third-liner, maybe a second-line guy, a good power forward second-liner, but he's not a first-line centerman. And when you're giving up 2 first-round picks and getting into the top 12, you're expecting that to be the pick. And so I'm really just not a fan of the value there, and I think you really could have just waited and grabbed a guy or grabbed one of similar stature as your pick. At number 13, the Detroit Red Wings grabbed Carter Bear. Really solid pick here. Give this one an A, just right on the money in terms of value. I think this is a very Red Wings-esque pick. Really good value, really good player. I think he's going to play really well into the forward core they're building for the long-term future. I had him as the 12th ranked guy. He went up 13. Just perfect on the money value here for the Detroit Red Wings. No issues with this pick whatsoever. And same thing goes for number 14, Jackson Smith. Give this one an A2. I had him 1 spot above Carter Bear. Love the fit there in Columbus. Really good value, really good player. all around, just no real notes on this. It's the right pick at this spot, was the correct selection to make here. The only thing maybe leading away for Nick an A+ is I think Victor Eklund is still better than all these guys, but those players are still great and really good picks at that spot. At number 15, the Vancouver Canucks grab Braden Coots. I had this mocked here, and I was expecting this to be the pick. I give it a B+. Just because with Coots there is limited upside. His ceiling's a little lower. He doesn't have the same skill ceiling as some of these other guys do, but a really high floor kind of guy who's a good character to have in your locker room as well. A leader, a future letter wearer on whatever team he ends up playing long term for, whether it's the Canucks or somewhere else. But they needed a centerman in their pool. They grabbed one with a really high floor, really physical, hard-nosed player despite his size. Really like this pick a lot, so a B+ is the grade. Then we get to back-to-back picks for the New York Islanders. They acquired in the Noah Dobson deal, and I wasn't sure on the value of that Noah Dobson trade, getting those 2 firsts and Heineman. I would have loved the value if they had used those 2 picks to trade up for Hagens like everyone was expecting them to do. But they ended up getting amazing value regardless. If they had taken the guys I had ranked at 16 and 17, it would have been an okay trade. They grabbed Victor Eklund and Keishon Aitchison. That is amazing value. Those are 2 guys I had in the top 15. I had Aitchison at 14, I had Eklund at 6, and they got them at 16 and 17. I love these picks for the Islanders. I give the Eklund pick an A+. I mean, he slipped way too far. He's way too talented to be there. He's a top 6 forward who plays a really physical, hard-nosed game with tons and tons of skill. I love the player. I love the pick here. And I give Keishon Aitchison an A. You know, right on the money and the value, fills a good need there behind Matthew Schaefer as your number 2 defenseman of the future. Just overall, the Islanders crushed this draft. They had some really good second-round picks too, and third-round picks. Daniil Prokhorov was a really good fit. Luka Romano was a great player. The Islanders killed this draft, and in the last 12 months, the Islanders have taken what I think was the worst prospect pool in hockey heading into the draft in 2024, and made it into a top 10 pool by adding Cole Yzerman, adding Callum Ritchie, Matthew Schaefer, Victor Eklund, Keishon Aitchison. They have just been adding, and this pool is really becoming a serious top-tier contender. I mean, some of their mid-round picks in last year's draft, Camille Bednarik and Jesse Pulkkinen and Marcus Gidloff, are also really solid. They have transformed this prospect pool and accelerated their timeline so well in these last few years. I've loved what they've done with their franchise so far. Calgary at the 18th overall pick, Cole Reshny, a really solid fit here. Give this a B. Pretty just solid pick, a good fit, a good player here who fits well with what Calgary is building. Gets him a good piece down the middle to help for the future. They don't really have a future centerman in their pool. He's got tons of skill. I like this pick a lot here, and I think it's a really solid fit for Calgary. Then St. Louis grabbing Justin Calbano at number 19. I give this pick an A-. I think it's a really good value fit here for the the Blues. I didn't think he'd be here, to be honest. I thought his floor was Calgary. They opted for the centerman, so I don't hate that pick either. But Carbonneau gives a good, decent mix into the prospect pool, adding some pure scoring punch into their lineup they didn't have beforehand in their pool. Like Stuggerud has a good scoring touch, but I think pairing him with a Justin Carbonneau can be a really good dynamic duo on the wings. You know, guys like Robert Thomas down the middle. I like this pick a lot for St. Louis. Next up, Columbus grabbing Pyotr Andrianov at pick number 20. Another big shock of this draft here. I give this pick a C+. I think goalie was a need here, but I don't like the value they got. I think I would have taken, if you took Ravensburger here, it's probably like a B or a B+, maybe an A-. I had Andrianov as the 3rd ranked goalie for me. I wasn't a fan of this value here. I think it's a guy you could have grabbed in the 2nd round or traded up into the 2nd round for. I think you could have waited a little longer for this. I think Ravensburger you would have to take here, and this would have been a good value and a great pick. Andrianov, I'm not so sure on the value here, so C+, because it did help balance out their prospect pool, and it gives another goalie prospect to help build from. And, you know, it's typically a safe bet, though, to bet on the Russian goaltenders. These goalies are all really great that got drafted in the first 2 rounds. I've got no issues with any of them. Like, they're all really good prospects. Just I don't like the value here at this pick. At number 21, the Nashville Predators just jumped the Pittsburgh Penguins to get this pick with trading with the Ottawa Senators. And they grabbed Cameron Reed. I give this a B. right on the money and the value, just a pretty solid player all around, decent piece to add to the pool, keeps the pool pretty well balanced. A nice defenseman with Tanner Molendyk to pair up with there. This is a pretty solid average pick, really. Moving along to the Pittsburgh Penguins again at pick 22, the pick they got from the Flyers in the trade back. And they took Bill Zonin. I've seen very mixed reviews on Bill Zonin. I didn't have him just outside the first round, but I've seen people raving about this pick. I've seen people are very upset about this pick. I'm kind of in the middle. I think it's an okay pick. I give it a B-. It's just average, I think it's decent. I think the way I view these trades for the Penguins is I view the draft class from about 18 down as all almost interchangeable players. I think they viewed it as almost 12 down was more interchangeable. I think that's why they made the trade back. And in that case, if that was their thought process, I really do think it's the right thought process. If you don't view anyone as like a tier above in that range, trade back and get more shots at those guys all on the same level. Because I do think this draft class was very, very tightly contested. I think it's not crazy to having Bill Zonin as a first round guy. You're having him as a really good value here. He's a hard-nosed player and he plays really a good physical game. If he hones in his skating ability, this could be a really solid value pick. And it's another guy for Pittsburgh that could maybe play center. They really did need a centerman in the pool, but they didn't. With the first two picks here, they kind of they went with guys who might play center and might not, and I'm not really a fan of that. But in terms of value and the player, I give it a B-. Like I said, it's just a decent pick. It's pretty average. I got no issues with it. There were some other players I would have preferred here, but Bill Zonin should be a solid piece. Then at 23, the Ottawa Senators grabbed Logan Hensler. This was a really great trade in general for the Sens. The pick was really solid too. Logan Hensler, I give it an A-. Adding a right shot defenseman to put behind Carter Yakimchuk. I mean, it's really, really a beautiful piece there. And the Sens traded back with the Preds here, got a third-round pick, which they didn't have before. They then flipped that third-round pick for Jordan Spence the next day in a really good trade. So, all in all, the Sens traded Cameron Reed for Logan Hensler and Jordan Spence. That's a really, really good piece of business by Steve Staios. The right side of the Sens decor is probably set for the next 10 years with Spence, Yakimchuk, and Hensler. And then, on the left side, you got Shabbat, who is on the older side now, or not older side, but, he's doesn't line up with the exact talent as the other guys. But you also got Tyler Kleven and Jake Sanderson, of course. So Ottawa's done a really good job with this decor. I really like this pick a lot, and it's a good fit for Ottawa long term. Back up to the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's William Horkoff. I give it a C. I think this one they really did address the center. William Horkoff is a centerman, a big centerman at that. Just not a lot of upside. I think he's, again, a middle six kind of guy, similar to a Jack Nesbitt. I think he's a decent guy. I didn't like the trade up, to be honest. I think at 31, where they were originally, you could have just gotten Will Horkoff, or you could have gotten a William Moore, a Cole McKinney, an Eric Nielsen, a Milton Gastrin, guys who I had ranked above Will Horkoff and fill the same sort of role as a solid, well-built, strong, two-way centerman. Horkoff is bigger than those guys. He's the biggest one here. He's a really big player. That was another trend that a lot of teams took, the Penguins included. And again, like I said, when I got down to this range, they're all pretty similar, so I don't think it's a really big reach. But I'm not a fan of the trade up, but I think it's a C. It's an okay piece. Really was not a big fan of what the Penguins did in the draft. I had high expectations. I was a little let down, but overall, I think they've got some decent pieces here. They got a lot of quantity. I was really just hoping for some more quality. Hopefully through trades, they'll address the quality portion of it and go get a guy like an Isaac Howard to get some real top-end pieces. Next up at 25, the Chicago Blackhawks grabbed Vaclav Nestrasil. I give this pick a C. It was similar to Horkoff. I had those guys ranked in similar ranges, so just a bit of a reach here to me. They didn't trade up for it. They just stick and pick, but decent piece, really good hands, really, really talented, skilled player who's got pretty good size as well. So it's a decent pick. It's okay, nothing really crazy. I feel like, to me, Kyle Davidson's done some interesting things with those late round picks, like Sacha Boisvert, and last year. It was just okay. I'm not really a big fan of some of the picks he's made in the late end of the first round, but we'll see how he develops. At 26, the Nashville Predators grab Riker Lee. I give it a C-. Arguably the most skilled guy in this draft class with his hands, but there's a lot of other question marks around his game, his skating, and his defensive game as a whole, and his effort levels. I had this guy a little even lower than those last two. But again, the reason these reaches, this is a bigger reach probably in terms of just numbers in my rankings to where they were picked than a Jack Nesbitt. The reason I give this one only a C-, I gave that one a D, is because at this range, like I said, they're very interchangeable. So people have such differing opinions on who lands where, and a few little tinks here and there could really jump a player up the board. And it's not crazy because these guys are all so similar in the style and the skill level they possess. At number 27, the Washington Capitals, in Washington Capitals fashion, grab an absolute steal in Lyndon Lakovic, another A-plus pick here for the Caps. They had a fantastic draft as per usual, and the rich get richer. A lot of these good teams that you're like, oh my god, how do these teams stay so competitive for so long? How do they always have good prospect pools while competing? Is they're going to do things like this. They just take the guy that's falling. They take the best available player. They don't overthink it. They don't draft for anything else. They just purely take the best available player, and either they develop them into a good piece or they trade them. And the Stars did it this draft. They grabbed Cameron Schmidt in the 3rd round. That was a steal. Their first draft pick of the night, or of the weekend. Cameron Schmidt in the 3rd round. That's an A-plus pick there. And then, the Canes did it all night. They grabbed guys like Ryabkin, who has good value if you can hone in on the off-the-ice issues. Semyon Frolov was good value. They grabbed Philip Ekberg in the 3rd round, or the 7th round. This was just good value. These teams always do this sort of thing. They just take the fallers, and then we wonder why they have such good prospect pools despite their team's talent level. This is how. Don't overthink it. The Capitals didn't do that. Lakovic is a great piece to get all the way down there at 27. Next up is the Winnipeg Jets, Sasha Boumedienne. I give this pick an A. I was higher on Boumedienne. I had him ranked pretty highly. This was really good value to me for the Jets. It fills a good need on the back end to pair with Elias Salomonsson. They had tons of forwards up front that are young and talented, so get some more help on the back end. The only reason I didn't give this an A+, I had him in a similar range to Lakovic, but the consensus around Lakovic had him in the same range as where I had him. I know I was higher on Boumedienne than a lot of the consensus was, so I give it an A though, because I still love the pick and I still love the fit there. Next up is the Chicago Blackhawks driving Mason West all the way up at pick 29. I give this pick a D. Really, I'm not a fan of the pick in general, but I'm really not a fan of the trade they sent to get the pick. I think Mason West is a guy you could have waited on. Really, you did not need to do all that to get Mason West, I think. And even if you were doing that, it's just such a risk. The way I view Mason West, he's a very risk player. Like there's a lot of risk involved in taking a guy like him. In just taking him, just drafting him in general, there's the risk involved of, will he actually play hockey? Will he change his mind in a year and go, you know what? This football thing's kind of nice. I'm getting these NIL offers from colleges. I got a lot more money to make here, and I have a real future here. Maybe I'll go this way. Right now, he's told all the teams he's staying hockey. But I think it's not crazy that he could change his mind in a year. He's an 18-year-old kid. That'll happen. Or he gets injured playing football. Or the focus on football, it distracts him from his hockey development. Maybe it tinkers with it. Because this season, he's going back to high school. He's going to play in the USHL. He could be taking a different developmental path to purely focus on hockey. So there's a lot of risk involved in just drafting Mason West in general. Just the pick in general is risky. They also sent a haul to get up there. They traded pick 34, so they traded up 5 picks. To do that, they sent another 2nd round pick in this draft and a 5th round pick. That is way too steep a price to trade up 5 picks. You could have waited 5 picks and Mason West would have probably still been there. And even if he's not, it's not the end of the world. Yes, it's a high upside swing. There's so much upside in this kid. But there is also so much risk involved that even drafting him is a risky pick. Trading that many assets to draft him when you really didn't need to trade that many assets makes it even riskier and lowers my grade even more. So it's a D. I think there's a lot of upside, like I said, but the risk is just really, really tough for us. The Blackhawks have the picks to do it. They have tons of prospects, but there's a lot of good pieces you could have grabbed here that were a lot safer. Next up, San Jose at pick 30, another surprising pick, Josh Ravensburger to the San Jose Sharks. There was talks they could take a goalie, but I think teams were assuming more the 2nd and the 3rd rounds. But this is a 1st round draft capital used on a goalie after you just traded 2 1st round level pieces in a 1st round pick and David Edstrom to the Predators for Yaroslav Askarov. So I'm a little confused. Obviously, he was just the top guy on their board, which he was a top guy on my board at this point in the draft too. So that's obviously what it was. It was just BPA, but it's a little interesting. You could have gotten a real solid piece. They ended up going with a defenseman at pick 33, but I really would have loved to see a defenseman here. You could have double dipped on D-men for all I care. I really am not a fan of this pick at all. I give it a C+. Again, I like Ravensburger as a player, so the player himself is bringing this up, but I just was not a fan of the fit in San Jose. And now Yaroslav Askarov sitting there like, oh my god, I am in the opposite shoe I was in 5 years ago when, you know, he was drafted to Nashville with UC Saros as an up-and-comer. He was young, but, you know, talented. We knew what we were getting in UC Saros. And then a few years later, it became about a battle in the crease, and they couldn't keep both, and they were forced to trade Askarov. Now the Sharks, who traded for Askarov, are in the same boat, where Askarov, you know what he's going to be, you know the talent he has. You're now drafting a goalie that's going to not quite line up with his timeline. You know, if you had a little bit of an older goalie, Ravensburger, through his development, would line up a little bit better with when he's on the way out. Askarov's going to be in the middle of his prime when Ravensburger's ready to come to the NHL. So it's going to be a tough thing to navigate for the Sharks, but maybe they're hoping best player available, and then we can do what the Preds did and flip them and get just good value back, just because I think this is the best value at this spot, which isn't crazy, but it's a questionable pick in my eyes. At pick 31, the LA Kings took Henry Brustevich. Give this a B. Decent value, decent player, good fit. The Kings have had issues deploying their young defensemen, so it makes me question it a little bit. But really one of the top players on the board here. Grab a B pick, you know, just right on value, solid fit, nothing too crazy, nothing too special about it. And then finally, rounding out the first round, the Calgary Flames took Cullen Potter. Gives pick an A. Really good value and another good skill piece to jump into this Calgary Flames prospect pool. I think Potter slipped a little too far, and the Flames scoop him up. Really solid duo they drafted, Nicole Reshny and Cullen Potter. They've done a real good job of drafting these past few years and have built out a really solid prospect pool. I like the Cullen Potter pick a lot, and I think he's gonna be a real fun player to watch over in Calgary. So that'll do it for my ratings of the first round picks in this year's NHL draft. It wasn't quite as chaotic as I think people expected it to be with all the rumors we were seeing. Not quite the trade ups in the top 10 we were expecting, but overall still an entertaining draft. They have to go back to that old draft system because this decentralized version was absolutely terrible, and it was just an absolute mess, and it took 5 hours for no reason. But overall, the players and the picks, some solid pieces added here and there. I'm gonna be continuing to do prospect stuff. I'll have my prospect rankings top 150 coming out later in the next month or so as I work through that and find spots where I'm fitting all these guys in among prospects in the NHL. Then after that, re-ranking the prospect pools with all these new additions. For the time being, I'm going to see if I have the time. I'm going to try and get out a free agency prediction video in the next day or so. But for sure, I'll have a free agency reaction where I'm grading free agent signings, and then I'll have a video grading the trades that I've made, and I'll include the trades made at the NHL draft, or not at the draft, but the trades made, you know, pre-draft, the Charlie Coyle deal and the Noah Dobson deal in that video, depending on how many trades we see on free agency day and a little further down the line. But yeah, I'll have those two videos coming out after, or maybe a third one coming out before, so we'll see how things shake out. But be sure to like and subscribe to see all that stuff coming out soon. Comment your thoughts on these ratings, and I will see you in the next one.